120 kilometers east of Prague lies the city of Pardubice, an active city with plenty to see and do. It is home to about 100,000 inhabitants and thousands of students from around the world. For tourists, the park's old castle and picturesque old town are probably the main reasons to visit. It is also well known for horse racing and motorcycling, besides the cultural activities, also thanks to this renovated automatic mill, which is now a creative hotspot in the city. Pardubice was also the home of the first Czech pilot, Jan Kaspar, who made a flight of 2 kilometers on 16th April 1910 with his Blériot 11. Here we see a replica as part of the static display at Aviatická Pouť, or Aviation Pilgrimage, an annual event held at the airport located next to Pardubice's horse race track. The aircraft that take part in the afternoon flying display can be admired at close range in the static display throughout the day. Elsewhere at the airport, you could also find this Junkers A60 Ultralight, a modern adaptation of the A50 model, and more ultralights with the Sparker and Stream Turbo. But there was much more to see and do at the show. As always, a great number of classic cars flocked to the airport with owners showing off their ageless beauties, always a highlight for visitors to see so many classic cars together. Reenactment also forms a big part of the show, and reenactors set up camp close to the show centre. Local and regional authorities also had promotional stands. There was also a large fun fair where children of all ages found entertainment for hours. Catering stands are plenty, with a wide range of delicious food options. And of course, there were also plenty of souvenir stands to peruse at leisure. One hangar was dedicated to hardcore flight simming. Other clubs lured visitors a different way to their displays. A large number of model military aircraft could be found alongside real-life military planes. These were part of an area to promote the Czech military. The static also included aircraft of the CLV training centre. Their fleet consists of Enstrom 480 and Mi-17 helicopters, plus EV-97R, Zlin 142, Let 410 and L-39 aircraft. Opening the flying display around lunchtime was the Czech Air Force with 3 aircraft. This Casa 295 with newly installed winglets and 2 JAS-39 Gripens, flying in from their respective home bases. The Gripens performed 2 passes, while the Casa 295 performed a parachutist drop on its second pass.
Nad Prahou pardubického letiště. Kasu už nad námi. A je tady výsadek.
The parachutists used traditional, round, non-steerable canopies for their descent.
Se skoky 17 parašutistů, kteří dosednou za malou chvíli na letištní plochu pardubického letiště. Jak už jsem říkala, se skakují z výšky 300 metrů a za chvilku jim budeme moci zatleskat za jejich.
Despite the rough weather conditions, all parachutists landed safely. The weather wreaked havoc with the program. Large parts of Central Europe suffered terrible conditions during the lead-up and show weekend, often with large floods as a result. Highlight after highlight dropped out as pilots didn't want to brave the nasty weather with rare classic aircraft, leaving the organizers with a considerable challenge to bring together a flying display. Even some pilots who had to fly in from other airfields in Czechia found themselves unable to make it to the show. Fortunately, this wonderful glider display using a LF-107 Lunac, piloted by David Jager, was not affected by the adverse weather. The LF-107 Lunac, meaning kite in English, is a Czech aerobatic glider designed by Prague-based company Rudy Letov in the late 1940s. It made its first flight in 1948, and 75 of these graceful aircraft were built. And we immediately come to one of the highlights of the show, a joint performance by the Czech Flying Bulls and the Czech Air Force JAS-39 Gripen. This one-off demonstration was rehearsed in the days leading up to the show and certainly drew a lot of attention. The display consisted of several maneuvers using different axes and included some very creative interpretations of classic air show moves.
Se nám znova blíží. No a vždycky si tady členové Red Bull Aerobatic týmu pro nás připravili nějakou novinku. No a letos je to právě tohleto vystoupení společně s kapitánem Špankem.
Following this dynamic part, the two acts return for their take on Because I Was Inverted.
Speciálu Extreme XA42 nad drahou pardubického letiště. Krásný skupinový zrcadlový let, podívejte se. Letouny jsou skutečně nedaleko od sebe. Republiky.
And here, we see an aircraft that flew with the Flying Bulls in the past, a Czech-built aerobatic Zlin 50, displayed here by Peter Jermis.
Ale pokračoval samozřejmě v létání dál a létal do doby, než se zase k akrobacii vrátil s celou řadou letadel. Působil například i ve vládní letce bývalého prezidenta České.
He is notable for his achievements as an aerobatic pilot, winning the FAI World Aerobatic Championships in 1984 and 1986, being two-time winner of the FAI European Aerobatic Championships in 1983 and 1985. In 1985, he was voted Sportsperson of the Year in what was then Czechoslovakia. Since 2000, he also flew commercially for Travel Service Airlines. His display clearly shows that the Zlin 50 has a nice presence to perform aerobatic routines and why it used to be such a popular aircraft at air shows. Spiraling down from above is Andrej Fiorelli, the PC-9M display pilot of the Slovenian Air Force.
Dostala vylepšená verze PC-9M a právě 9 těchto letounů si objednalo slovinské.
The Slovenian PC-9Ms are all based at Cerclea ob Krk, home of the military training school.
Andrej Fiorelli.
The 9 PC-9s are not used for training there, however, but rather have light strike and close air support as their main focus. For training, the Slovenian Air Force relies on the Czech Zlin 242. Their fleet consists of 9 aircraft with upgraded avionics provided by the Israeli company Radom. Andrej has won countless awards for best solo displays at air shows around Europe for many years, thanks to his graceful yet energetic routine in this aircraft.
Velmi dlouho, totéž se samozřejmě dá říct o letoun, který původně byl nabízen jako Peach Pilatus PC-9 MK2.
Next up was the Czech Air Force W3 Sokol, performing a simulated search and rescue operation.
Vrtulník se zastavuje a následuje sladění záchranářů. Z prostoru, kde byli záchranáři vysazeni, se vrtulník vzdálí za několik okamžiků takzvanou couvačkou.
The W3 was designed and built in Poland by PZL Swidnik, which is now part of Augusta Westland.
Vrtulníky V3A Sokol jsou umístěny na vojenském letišti Praha-Kedy. Jsou součástí 24. základny dopravního letectva.
This type first flew in 1979. Production ran from 1986 until 2015.
Záchranáři jsou znovu na zemi, bude následovat manévr.
The Czech Air Force operates 10 of these machines, mainly for search and rescue. They are based at Prague Kybely, with detachments at Pilsen and Bechin. A secondary task is fighting forest fires using Bambi buckets.
Zakončen následnou takzvanou spirálou smrti, spirálovým letem směrem dolů.
The main operator are the Polish Armed Forces. It is also in use by the militaries of the Philippines, Algeria, and Myanmar.
Všechny ty manévry, vlastně, které nám posádka tady poskytla, nejsou v žádném případě samoučelné, protože při velkých záchranářských akcích, jak to bylo třeba například v případě povodní nebo při jiných příležitostech, tak pilot skutečně musí často společně s svou posádkou sáhnout velice hluboko do svých schopností a využít všechno to, co tady teď vidíte vlastně nad svými hlavami, tak aby bezpečně dopravil družstvo záchranářů tam, kde ho třeba případně přesunul vybudovanou zástavkou mezi stromy a tak dále, tam, kde je třeba bezpečně. Vrtulníku se pilot vrtulníku vrátí pro záchranáře. Jedna z nejnáročnějších ukázek, jedna z nejnáročnějších figur, kterým zamáváním celým strojem se můžeme rozloučit, aspoň takhle. Děkujeme za perfektní vystoupení, tak jak je tady každým rokem zvykem.
Another helicopter presenting a rescue operation then, but slightly differently. DSA is specialized in urgent medical interventions, sometimes in remote areas.
Společnost Delta System stála u polévky letecké záchranné služby v tehdejším Československu, to samozřejmě ještě nebylo
They also provide air taxi and aerial transport services, though, as well as aerial filming or mapping tasks, and also helicopter flight training.
Záchranné služby u nás.
Jako nejvíc na
Kromě záchranné služby, tak jak máme možnost sledovat tu činnost služby aerotaxi a se svými vrtulníky také především.
They have a varied fleet of helicopters for this task, including Ecureuils and the Airbus helicopter H135T2 you can see in action during this rescue demonstration. The company has its headquarters at the airport of Hradec Králové, about 25 kilometers north of Pardubice. The H135 is a twin-engine turbine helicopter with a four-bladed main rotor and Fenestron-type tail rotor, a tail rotor embedded in the tail boom for improved flight safety and also noise abatement.
Je to v Hradci Králové, Kryštof 06, Ústí nad Labem, Kryštof 15, Liberec, Kryštof 18, No a první prototyp tohoto vrtulníku zajetl v roce 1988.
You can easily be forgiven for assuming swinging underneath helicopters is a favorite Czech pastime. This Boeing Stearman comes from the Czech organization Classic Trainers and was a last-minute addition to the program to fill some gaps.
Tenhle ten velice rozšířený cvičný dvouplošník, který před druhou světovou válkou, ale i během ní sloužil jako základní nebo pro základní letecký výcvik.
The organization is based at the airfield of Pilsen.
Tisíce spojeneckých pilotů vstoupil do historie především pod značkou Boeing, když to jméno Stearman.
Their Stearman was built for the US Navy in 1943. It was mostly used for elementary pilot training at Corpus Christi Navy Base, Texas.
Který vidíte teď nad svými hlavami a který nese zbarvení jednoho z cvičných Stearmanů, na kterém trénovali v Kanadě i naši piloti během druhé světové války, americké námořnictvo a námořní pěchota používali Stearmany.
A complete restoration was done in 1987 and aimed for the best possible authentic look and fitting it with equipment corresponding to the Navy standard version of 1943. The aircraft livery in all yellow paint is very rare and corresponds to the standards of US Navy trainers in 1944.
Classic Trainers, letoun P-51 Mustang, tak ten ještě budeme moci dnes tady na obloze nad pardubickým letištěm vidět.
This energetic Sukhoi Su-29 belongs to the Czech Aerobatic Club and is flown with great gusto by Jan Sobotka. He is a member of the Aero Club Mladá Boleslav
Jako pozdrav od pana prezidenta, který nám letos poprvé dal záštitu. Pan prezident byl prvním na světě, který létal v tomto letadle a poskytl tedy záštitu a omlouvá se, z pracovních důvodů tady dnes s námi nemohl být, ale rád se přijde podívat třeba na příští ročník. Takže my si velice vážíme toho, že nám prezident České republiky...
The Sukhoi Su-29 is a Russian two-seat aerobatic aircraft based on the Su-26. It inherited most of the technical features of its predecessor.
Letounů Sukhoi 26. Tady ta 29 bylo nutnost udělat dvoumístný.
Due to wide use of composite materials, the empty weight is only 50 kilograms higher than the single-seat Su-26's empty weight.
Nestabilní, aby se nám takhle pěkně točilo, jak to Honza předvádí. Z nich jedna je tady a měla čest vést našeho pana prezidenta. Jinak létají jejich jednomístné varianty model 26, s nimi letouny 31. Teď jsem na chvilku přestal, nás přehlušil zvuk motoru.
There were several demonstrations by Czech police forces at the show, showing operations such as riot control and intercepts of suspect vehicles. These took place in the reenactment 3D theatre. We'll see used during other displays later.
A tyto pachatelé musí být eskortováni v nejbližší.
Here we see a Zlin 142 that belongs to the Czech Air Force Pilot Training Center, CLV.
Centrum leteckého výcviku, neboli CLV v Pardubicích, zajišťuje od roku 2004 kompletní výcvik pilotů armády České republiky a zajišťuje ho na cvičných letounech Z-142C a L-39C, oba dva letouny teď během několika...
It is a further development of the Zlin 42, featuring a slightly enlarged two-seat airframe.
L-410 a vrtulujících N-Strom 480 a Mi-17. Ty N-Stromy jsme mohli vidět.
It is very well suited for aerobatic flight, with limits up to +6 and -4G.
Dobře znát.
It also boasts a fully inverted fuel and oil system, so it can sustain inverted flight for a long time.
Zastavení, krátký pád po ocase.
9 of these are part of the CLV fleet.
Bezpečí poškození ocasních ploch, tam pilot opravdu musí vědět, co udělat. Tak a vývrtka na zádech. To Martin vždycky říká, že udělá tolik otoček, kolik zrovna má v tu chvíli výšky. Tady u toho letounu je potřeba hospodařit s energií.
Flying the aircraft here is Czech aerobatic legend Martin Sonka.
Martin i Petr Kopstein mají za sebou v uplynulých 2 týdnech vlastně jeden z leteckých závodů série Air Race X. Tahle ta série, která si...
CLV, part of LOM Praha, grew out of the 34th School Air Force Base, which flew out of Pardubice since 1994.
V technologiích, kdy piloti, kteří létají na předem připravených tratích, létají nad svými domácími letišti.
All Czech military pilots get their training here.
Chytrá krabička, která je umístěná přímo v tom letounu.
The training center celebrated its 20th anniversary in 2024.
Následně používá se přitom virtuální realita. Je to koncept, který přinesl, nebo který vymyslel vlastně v těch uplynulých 14 dnech. V roce 2011 se létalo stříbro, v roce 2013 pak bronz, to bylo na mistrovství světa v letecké akrobatii.
Do X3
a lítá s tím, tak každý si říká, proč tím neudělal taky něco při tom zlinku. Ale ono to opravdu nejde. Letounů.
CLV also has a heritage flight, and here we see it in action. One of the current L-39 Albatrosses in formation with the classic C-11. This pair performed a few nice formation passes before breaking into their respective solo routines.
Výcvikového letounu, ale především
There are 7 L-39C Albatros jet trainers in the CLV fleet. This one is piloted by Jan Hromnik. The L-39 is one of the many success stories of the Czech aviation industry. It first flew in 1972, and it won the competition to become the standard jet trainer in the Warsaw Pact. There is also a newer version, the L-39NG, which Aerovodokody is actively marketing and pushing to potential customers around the world. And it is no doubt going to take the place of the L-39C in the CLV fleet.
Kdy je potřeba dbát kontroly rychloměru, aby se to letadlo vystoupení se bude skládat.
The Aero C-11 is a license-built version of the Soviet Yak-11, which in its turn was based on the Yak-3 fighter from the Second World War.
Samozřejmě ten zvuk té hvězdice, to je nenahraditelný. Motor má výkon, jak už jsem řekl, asi 700.
It belongs to the Czech Military History Association in Prague and is part of the CLV Heritage Fleet.
Nastoupání do původní výšky. Není to žádný.
Flying the aircraft here is Thomas Brustik.
Co je částečně začala vyřazovat armáda, jich celá řada skončila ještě také ve Svazarmu. I tam došlo k využití jejich vynikajících akrobatických schopností. Vznikla například známá.
Takže občas si chodil za práší na pole se čmelákem. Z toho vychází i taková levnost v tom letání, že on je zvyklý lítat s přetíženým letadlem s malým výkonem. Ten čmelák taky není žádná slava.
Tak jsme měli možnost si krátce vyslechnout ten charakteristický zvuk.
After the C-11, we turn the volume up quite a few notches because we move on to the Czech Air Force Saab JAS-39 Gripen display, flown for the final year by Captain Andrej Špenko. He is part of 211 Squadron, based at Čáslav. The Czech Air Force leases 14 Gripens from Sweden, and they are used extensively in defensive NATO operations such as Baltic air policing. The Czech Air Force has decided that the JAS-39 will be replaced by the F-35 in the coming years. After the Gripen, it was time for the first of Aviatická Pouť trademark scenes. This one centered around World War I.
Dostala pod útok historických letounů francouzské konstrukce. Prolétá nám tady ultralehká replika letounu Morane Saulnier. Rakušané se pochopitelně.
It contains several replicas staging an aerial battle over the airfield, some attacking ground targets, while on the ground, troops try to fend off the attackers.
Jednalo se o letoun, který
podpoře pozemních jednotek vyzbrojené například letouny Hannover C3, dvoumístný.
Zatímco to druhou dvojici protivníků tvoří.
Most of these aircraft come from the Metadei Vlaka Museum, and they are all replicas.
Rovnoplošná stíhačka z konce první světové války Fokker D8. Nám sem znova blíží, aby se pokusila zaútočit na pozemní jednotky Rakousko-Uherska.
The overall effect of the presentation is enhanced by powerful pyrotechnics.
Práce německé firmy Fokker během první světové války. Těm předcházejícím dvouplošným strojům v tom, že byl aerodynamicky mnohem čistější. Díky jednoplošnému uspořádání vlastně letoun postrádal výplety, které přinášely dodatečný aerodynamický odpor.
In the air, you can see the Morane MS-139, Nieuport 11, Nieuport 12, Fokker D8 and a Pfalz.
Že tuhletu koncepci takzvaného Parasine D381 a 382
This evocative display clearly shows how basic aircraft were at the time and how fragile they were to go into battle. No doubt, these replicas are safer than the originals.
jakého dosahovali právě.
Following the ground attacks, the aircraft battle it out among each other in the sky.
Kde se výkon vyšplhal až na nějakých 130.
Among the aircraft is also a replica Morane MS-139, part of the Aviatitska Pout squadron. They also have a newly built replica of the Austro-Hungarian Berg fighter biplane, but sadly that didn't make it to its premiere at the event.
Stíhacího šlo v podstatě o francouzský letoun.
Originally, this Fouga Magister jet trainer over from France was supposed to have been a static participant, but it made it into the flying display owing to the large number of cancelled acts.
Na základě právě typu Magister vyvinou
It belongs to the association Vieille Tige from Valenciennes in northern France. Before it belonged to the Dutch Historic Jet Association. After a lengthy restoration process, it flew again in 2013. The aircraft was delivered to the French Air Force in 1961 and was used at the base of Clermont-Ferrand from 1962 until 1974, and later served as a liaison aircraft at Mont-de-Marsan until 1990.
Letouny izraelského letectva útočily na pozemní cíle na Sinajském poloostrově.
In all, 929 Fouga Magisters were built, and they served the air forces of 19 countries. Back to the Czech Republic with a pilot we saw earlier on in the program, Martin Sonka, but this time he is flying an Extra 300 SR. One interesting aspect of the display is that Martin does the commentary himself, straight from the cockpit. Martin won the Red Bull Air Race World Championship in 2018, but he's been world famous way before that as part of the series. He was also a demonstration pilot on the Czech Air Force L159 Alka, displaying it around Europe. His aircraft, the Extra 300 SR, was built especially for use in the air race, with the wing offering more lift than standard Extra 300s, but it never really caught on. Most of the pilots much preferred the Edge 540. Martin also holds a master's degree in aviation management from the University of Pardubice. Another set piece then, this one set during the Second World War. It was supposed to have a dogfight between the ME-262 and this P-51D Mustang. But as it was, the German troops in the scenario were left without air cover, allowing pilot Dan Griffith to attack them at leisure.
V tomto stavu podařilo odhalit a získal jej britský sběratel Philip Warner. To, co bylo nutně třeba, a to znamená vyrobit propust. Nová stací, který se stal SM a sestřelil celkem 9 nepřátelských.
The Mustang he's flying here, Little Rebel, is actually on the Belgian civilian aircraft register, and its displays in Central Europe are coordinated by Stephen Stead.
Velmi často se zkonkoplynou chemické a muniční továrny právě tady v Pardubicích. P2, ale už to všechno bylo vyřešeno a celá sbírka historických letounů.
And before you know it, the Germans withdraw under the onslaught from above.
Kooperativa je opět hlavním partnerem a pojistitelem aviatické pouti pro život, jaký je. Kooperativa vám nabízí pojištění přesně podle vašich potřeb.
A traditional participant at the show is this Bucker Jungmann, very apt to have a 1930s training aircraft so prominently in the show at a training base.
Druhé světové války potom bylo rozhodnuto o pokračování výroby toho.
There were also license-built Czech variants of this aircraft during and after the Second World War. The Aero C4 was built during the German occupation. And after the war, the Czechs developed the aircraft further with a Walter Miner 4 engine and designated it the C-104. Flying the aircraft here is Rainer Berndt. Another training aircraft from a bygone era, a Zlin 381, which is based on the Bucker 181 Bestmann, a German monoplane training aircraft from the early 1940s. Zlin continued the production after the Second World War, redesignated as the C6 and C106 for service with the Czechoslovak military. The civilian variants were the Zlin 281 and 381. This aircraft was flown by Thomas Brustik, who also flew the C-11 earlier. And then it was already time for the final set piece. And this one was a first at Aviatická pouť. It was set during the war in Vietnam. Here we see some very odd VC soldiers coming under attack by a US Army AH-1 Cobra. The Cobra comes from Heliček, a company that offers all kinds of helicopter services, including pleasure flights with this historic helicopter from the nearby Hradec Králové airfield. Sadly, this display only happened on Saturday due to a powerful thunderstorm cutting the program short on Sunday. We can only hope the set piece expands a bit in the future to include some other historic aircraft from the era. We close our look back with one of the finest civilian display teams in the entire world. the Czech Flying Bulls.
Při svém letošním vystoupení
They fly the SBAC-X A-42 aerobatics aircraft, designed and built in Germany by Philipp Steinbach.
Čtveřice špičkových českých akrobatických pilotů.
No surprise that the team attracted the attention of neighboring Austria's energy drink company Red Bull, as they provide exciting, high adrenaline displays at air shows and other high-profile events for the company around Europe. The current Flying Bulls succeeded the Flying Bulls that flew with Zlin 50s in 2015. That team, in turn, grew out of the Czech Skybox team, which were a popular act in Europe in the 1980s and 1990s. As you'll see throughout their display, their specialty are negative G maneuvers in close formation, with the blood getting pushed to the pilot's head. Very uncomfortable, and it can lead to a red out. This is where the capabilities of the XA-42 come into their own, with the plane being able to take up to 10 times, plus or minus, the force of gravity. With these final few passes by the Czech Flying Bulls, we near the end of a challenging edition of Aviatická pouť at Pardubice.
Tak uvidíme, budeme jim přát, aby to všechno klaplo.
The organisers deserve praise for pressing on with the show in trying conditions against the odds and still managing to present a full flying display. If you're interested in a flying display off the beaten track, then perhaps this show is something for you.